Good morning. This is an open hearing of the independent inquiry into matters relating to Afghanistan. The use of mobile telephones in the courtroom or annex is prohibited. Please could I ask you to ensure that all mobile telephones have been switched off or turned to silent. Please may I draw your attention to the fact that the Chair of the inquiry, the Right Honourable Sir Justice Haddon-Cave, has made a restriction order in relation to this hearing. Copies of the restriction order are available on request, but in substance, the order has made the following effect. This order restricts attendance in the courtroom of the open hearing scheduled to hear evidence about the deletion of material, a UK Special Forces Headquarters computer server, known in these proceedings as ITS1. Attendance in the courtroom in which the hearing is to be held, namely Court 73, is restricted as follows. To members of the inquiry team, the recognised legal representatives of the core participants, and the following witnesses when they are giving evidence. N5857, a contractor and the infrastructure engineer. N5858, a contractor and the manager of N5857. To members of the inquiry team and to the core participant recognised legal representatives only when the following witnesses are giving evidence. N5859, an officer in UKSF involved in information systems. N5595, who carries out internal investigation. N2311, UKSF Information Manager. Recognised legal representatives includes the legal team assisting the recognised legal representative in the discharge of the recognised legal representative's functions. This order prohibits by restriction, publication or dissemination the identities of any of the witnesses listed in paragraph 2 above, or any information which might lead to their identification. The purpose of restricting attendance in the courtroom where the hearing is taking place is to protect both the witnesses' identities and this order. To ensure public access, a live video link of the hearing will be shown in the annex courtroom to which the public will have admittance. The live video link will not show the witnesses, so that their physical appearance is concealed, but their evidence may be heard. In accordance with the General Restriction Order for Inquiry Hearings dated 23rd of October 2023, no person may disclose, publish or broadcast in any form or by any means anything that is said or done in the inquiry hearing room until 10 minutes after it's taken place. Counsel to the inquiry, or the solicitor to the inquiry, must be informed of any request to make an application for a restriction order in relation to anything that has been said or done in the inquiry hearing room in the preceding 10 minutes. Anything that was said or done during that period will then be subject to a restriction order prohibiting its disclosure, repetition or duplication until the Chair has finally determined the application. Where such a request is made, the courtroom may be cleared for the Chair to consider where there has been a breach of any restriction order, and both the live video link to the annex and the live stream YouTube recording will be temporarily stopped. Once the Chair has determined the matter enclosed, the live video link to the annex room and to YouTube will be recommenced. The Chair will confirm if a restriction order is to be made and what steps, if any, are to be taken to ensure compliance. The above orders are subject to a penal notice. This means that any breach of any element of the restriction orders may be certified to the High Court or the Court of Session, who will have the power to fine or imprison anyone found to have been in breach of the order.
The intent of the inquiry is to hold as much as it can in open. As you will have heard from the learned usher, I have made a careful series of restriction orders and anonymity orders in order to facilitate that intent. It's important that everybody takes care to abide by those restriction orders. We may, from time to time, have to rise in order to deal with certain matters, but we will see how it goes. Mr. Glasgow.
Sir, a few introductory remarks before I turn to deal with the issues and the evidence that fall to be considered over the next few days. It is important that the core participants and the general public understand the precise ambit of the inquiries that are to be made of the witnesses and of the evidence they will provide. The focus of the next 2 days will be upon a particular IT system that was used by UKSF, a system that has become known as ITS1, and in particular the allegation that the server was forensically wiped as part of a cover-up to prevent the Royal Military Police from recovering evidence relating to extrajudicial killings. We will be looking at what happened to that system, the changes that were made to it, and the potential impact of those changes upon the matters that this inquiry is investigating. In so doing, we will consider some of the allegations that have been made about what happened to it. However, we will not seek to answer each of those allegations at this stage. We are predominantly going to be concerned with what happened, rather than why particular decisions might have been taken. That is not to say that the why is not important, or that it will not feature again in any of the evidential hearings. It will. But at this stage, we think it most helpful, sir, to focus on clarifying the precise facts of what happened and the chronology of the relevant events. To that end, it is sensible that before calling any of the evidence, I set out the relevant context, I identify the scope and purpose of the evidence to be called, and I provide a brief overview of that evidence. Can I begin with the relevant context? In 2015, Operation Northmoor, the Royal Military Police's investigation into allegations of unlawful killing by special forces in Afghanistan, decided it was necessary to forensically recover an IT system from the higher headquarters of UK Special Forces. It was considered, and subsequent events undoubtedly show it to be the case, that the server, ciphered in these and other proceedings as ITS1, was likely to contain highly relevant emails and other documents. Whilst the forensic retrieval of an IT system might be thought to have been a straightforward matter, that proved not to be the case. UKSF flatly objected to providing the server or a copy of it on a number of grounds, the most significant being the suggested operational impact upon UKSF were the contents of their secure server to be provided to the service police. The RMP decided not to use their powers to seize the system immediately, but instead chose to negotiate an amicable solution. However, despite many months of dialogue between the parties, it proved impossible to reach a satisfactory conclusion, and some of the officers working on Operation Northmoor grew increasingly frustrated. During the course of the negotiations, the RMP were advised that UKSF were in the process of changing their IT system and that their data was to be migrated from ITS1 onto a new platform as part of a life extension programme. Accordingly, the RMP requested that the ITS1 server, which was to become redundant following the upgrade, be made available to them once the migration was complete. And UKSF agreed that the RMP could seize the server. Understandably, the RMP were anxious to ensure the integrity of the data on that server. And so the RMP gave a direction to the UKSF not to delete, amend or modify any of the data. UKSF duly gave that assurance. In December 2016, an RMP warrant officer with the appropriate technical qualifications, W02 Jim Pridden, visited the relevant site with a view to at least beginning the process of data retrieval. However, he discovered that despite the undertaking that was understood to have been agreed, UKSF had deleted material from the ITS1 legacy server. The position was recorded in the Senior Investigating Officer's decision log, that's the log of Captain Wright, in the following way. UKSF have deleted material from the preserved ITS1 server. The deletion process has been conducted in such a way that it is irreversible and impossible to determine what has been deleted. This is in direct disobeyance of our demands to preserve the data in its entirety and SFHQ UK's agreement that they would not do so. This decision log, together with other supporting contemporaneous documentation, was disclosed to the lawyers acting for the Afghan families as part of the judicial review proceedings that were the precursor to this inquiry. What was not provided was any of the evidence that has now recently been given to the inquiry in response to the requests for information issued by the inquiry legal team. In light of the limited disclosure that was made during the judicial review to Lead A, Mr. Hermer King's counsel's observation in his opening statement to the inquiry, the defiance of an unequivocal direction to retain evidence is at best highly suspicious and at worst a patent and criminal attempt to pervert the course of justice in a multiple homicide investigation, that observation is not without foundation. Whether that criticism is still valid after a review of the evidence which is now available will be for you, sir, to determine. But it will be obvious that when Mr. Hermer made that observation, he did not have all the information available to him, and it will be equally obvious that the fact he found himself in such a position was no fault of his own. Can I turn to consider the scope and purpose of the inquiries over the next few days? In these hearings, evidence will be called to assist you, sir, to make factual findings as to what actually happened to the ITS1 server. This is relevant to the fourth term of reference, in particular term of reference 4C, and in particular to the issue of whether there was a cover-up. As I said, these hearings will focus at this stage on the what rather than the why. We want to establish precisely what occurred rather than why it might have happened. As to the why questions, and in particular, why UKSF chose not to provide access to the RMP to ITS1 when first asked, why the decision was taken to delete material from ITS1, and why the RMP were not provided with access to any available backups of ITS1, those questions will all be considered in subsequent hearings when the relevant witnesses are available to give evidence. Furthermore, why the RMP chose not to secure access to ITS1 as soon as its significance became known, why the RMP decided not to use their legal powers to seize ITS1, and why the RMP chose not to investigate what happened to ITS1 and the deletion of data from it are all matters that will be examined once the relevant material has been gathered. The inquiry legal team recognises the potential significance of these questions and will be seeking answers to them. However, given the emphasis placed upon them and the stark allegations that have been made, it would be a disservice to everyone were we to attempt to address these issues before all of the relevant information has been gathered. Can I turn to deal with some of the evidence that you are likely to hear over the course of the next few days? With the assistance of all of the core participants, for which we are genuinely grateful, it has been possible to call this chapter of evidence in open hearings. This has been achieved by applying redactions to material that is sensitive and applying a gist wherever possible, and enabling the core factual evidence to be put into the public domain. However, the identities of most of the witnesses and the companies that are involved have been made the subject of anonymity orders. Therefore, the witnesses will not appear on the live feed and, other than the legal representatives for the core participants, including the Afghan families, only the members of the team for the individual witness will be permitted in this courtroom. Plainly, this will require careful orchestration, and it may be that we will have to take more regular breaks than might normally be the case. But we are determined that this evidence should be part of the open hearings to which all the core participants, the press and the public will have access. We also intend to publish the documents referred to in these hearings on the inquiry website at the conclusion of these hearings. I would like to briefly summarise that evidence so that those who are listening to it will better understand the link between the individual witnesses and the link between their evidence and the issues to be determined by the inquiry. When a file is created on a storage system such as a hard disk, it will be stored in a number of places. There will be an entry in the index. The index will contain, in basic terms, the name of the file and a record of where on the storage device it is held. If it is a large file, it might be held in a number of places. Then there will be the place or places on the storage device where the actual file itself is held. When a file is deleted using normal processes, for example by emptying the recycle bin, all that happens is the name of the file is removed from the index. This means that for the purposes of any user of the system, the file no longer exists. However, a forensic expert could scan the hard disk, find where the file is stored, and potentially recover it. Much of the evidence we are going to hear will concern the use of a program called S-delete. The S stands for secure. There are at least two linked purposes for the use of S-delete. When S-delete is used to delete a file, not only does it delete the entry for the file in the index, but it also overwrites the file contents itself with zeros. This is called zeroing. This has two potential benefits. The file itself is securely deleted, and even forensic tools will not be able to recover it. And by zeroing the deleted data, it reduces the amount of disk space that is used. This means that if it is decided to copy the entire storage device, there will be less data to copy, and so it will take less time. I hope it will assist to briefly summarise the evidence of the witnesses you'll hear from, and you will, I anticipate, understand the significance of the use of S-delete. WO2 Jim Pridden served with the RMP from 1995 and is a specialist investigator in the field of cybercrime and digital forensic investigations. WO2 Pridden was a member of the Operation Northmoor team, and he recalls that the UKSF server, ITS1, was identified as a server of interest to the investigation. In October 2015, WO2 Pridden visited UKSF4 in order to discuss obtaining access to the ITS1 server. It was decided that the investigation needed to obtain a forensic image of the server in order to have access not only to the current data, but also to any data that might have been deleted. WO2 Pridden was made aware that UKSF were of the opinion that if the RMP seized ITS1, then this would have an operational impact upon UKSF. he was also made aware of discussions between the then Provost Marshal Army and the Director of Special Forces that had resulted in an agreement between them as to the means of recovering potentially relevant data. WO2 Pridden had sight of emails that confirmed UKSF would make ITS1 available to Operation Northmoor after the migration to the new server was complete, and that they would not change, modify, or delete any data on the server. These emails were exchanged in September and October of 2016, which, as it turns out, was at least 3 months after S-Delete was first run on the server. WO2 Pridden attended UKSF in December 2016 in order to recover the server. However, he was advised that as part of the migration process, S-Delete had been deployed in order to assist with the data transfer. WO2 Pridden was familiar with the programme and understood that previously deleted data would have been overwritten and that it would be impossible to recover this. Upon leaving the meeting, WO2 Pridden advised Captain Wright of what had occurred, and furthermore, that he understood that this had taken place in the 2 weeks before his visit. Despite this turn of events, the Gold Commander for Operation Northmoor, Lieutenant Colonel Harvey, informed his team that they were not to investigate what had happened to ITS1. Given the way that WO2 Pridden understood these events to have occurred, he was, and still is, concerned that data was deleted from the server in breach of the promise to preserve the contents of the server. And he was, and still is, concerned that he was not permitted to investigate how this had been allowed to happen. Turning to deal with another witness, N2311. N2311 was employed on a full-time reserve contract as an information manager with UKSF between June 2015 and July 2017. As part of this role, N2311 was involved in supervising the migration of data from ITS1 to the modern storage system. Between July 2016 and January 2017, N2311 was involved in various communications between the RMP and UKSF regarding the RMP's access to the data stored on ITS1. N2311 was aware that the RMP did not want any data to be deleted as part of the migration process. N2311 exchanged emails with WO2 Pridden in September 2016 and assured him that as part of the migration there would be no change, modification or deletion of any data on the server. N2311 was not aware that the migration process would involve the deletion of any data. However, in late 2016, N2311 came to understand that S-Delete had been used on a number of storage drives. This had been done without N2311's knowledge. In January 2017, N2311 was present at a meeting when it was decided between UKSF and the RMP that a unit investigation should be conducted into the events surrounding the use of S-Delete. And that leads to N5859. N5895, a member of UKSF, was tasked to conduct an internal investigation into the use of S-Delete, and he produced a report in February 2017. In that report, N5595 identified that the transfer of data from ITS1 to the new server was part of a life extension project, that S-Delete had been run on the ITS1 server between the 24th of June and the 23rd of August, that the application was used to identify and securely delete already deleted data, that it was used in order to optimize disk capacity and to reduce migration times, and that the work was conducted as part of the on-site engineer-supported duties and carried out without the awareness or oversight of the military chain of command. The import of the evidence from N2311 and N5595 would appear to be the following. The migration of data from ITS1 to the new server was part of a life extension program. The use of S-Delete was driven by the civilian contractors, and it was carried out many months before any undertaking was given to preserve the contents of ITS1. Nevertheless, UKSF were aware that the RMP were anxious to preserve ITS1 before the server migration process was carried out. Notwithstanding the recollection of N2311 or the conclusion of N5595 to the effect that UKSF were unaware of the planned use of S-Delete, the civilian contractors are clear that UKSF were advised about and approved the use of S-Delete. And can I turn to deal with their evidence next, please?
Thank you.
N5859 joined the British Army in 1986. In around 2007 or 2008, he was posted into UKSF4 and subsequently became responsible for the communication information systems support for ITS1. As part of that role, he was deployed to Afghanistan, to SFHQ Afghanistan in December 2011. There he was responsible, in particular, for the rollout of an upgrade to the ITS1 operating system. He returned from Afghanistan in April or May 2012 and took up postings outside the group until 2015. In April or May 2015, he returned to UKSF4 as an SO3 in a role entitled Technical Officer Communications. In that role, he was focused on the replacement of ITS1 with a new server and was responsible for the management of a team of contractors who planned and coordinated the delivery of this task. This entailed migrating the data from ITS1 to the new server, which we shall refer to as ITS8, and then the subsequent decommissioning of ITS1, which was the legacy server. A civilian contractor provided two contractors to conduct the data migration, and they are known by the ciphers N5858 and N5857. In January 2016, N5859 became aware of a program called S-Delete, a program, as I've already identified, and as you will hear, which can be used to permanently erase already deleted data. However, N5859 has no recollection of being informed that it was to be used as part of the data migration process. As to the two civilian contractors that he has mentioned, first N5857. N5857 worked for a civilian contractor between 2014 and 2017, and that civilian contractor provided IT support to UKSF. In 2016, he was employed as one of the third-line IT support engineers, and in that role he was embedded on-site at UKSF4. The civilian contractor for which he worked was responsible for the architectural design and operational management of the closed IT system used by UKSF. But the contractor had nothing to do with the content of that system, and N5857 had no access to the information that was stored upon it. In 2016, a major technical upgrade was planned to migrate data from one storage solution to another. Accordingly, in May of that year, N5857, in company with a colleague, N5858, attended a 5-day training course. As part of the course, the attendees were taught how to zero deleted data and how to use S-delete. This was recommended to be used as part of the planned migration for the UKSF upgrade. As explained already, zeroing deleted data was a way of ensuring that unnecessary disk space was not taken up on a server, and it was a way of ensuring that the transfer to the new server was faster than would otherwise have been the case. N5857 recalls that the zeroing of already deleted data was discussed with UKSF and that they had to approve the use of S-delete. Messages exchanged between N5857 and N5858 suggest that S-delete was being run as early as the 14th of June 2016. N5857 is clear that S-delete did not and could not delete live data, and in any event, backups were routinely made of the data that was stored on the servers. His colleague, N5858, was employed by the same civilian contractor as a fourth-line IT support engineer. He was based at the civilian contractor's offices and provided advice to the third-line IT support engineers, such as N5857. N5858 was involved in advising on the zeroing of deleted space to aid the migration process and reduce the downtime for the system whilst the migration was taking place. N5858 recommended options and tested them, and one such option was S-delete. N5858 attended the same 5-day course that was run between the 23rd and the 27th of May 2016, and it was on this course that he was advised on the use of S-delete. Having looked at the message that was exchanged between him and 5857, he also believes that S-delete was run for the first time on the 14th of June 2016. N5858 is clear that the only data that was affected by S-delete were those files that had already been deleted by UKSF. At the time of running S-delete, he was aware that backups were available, and thus there was a method for retrieving any files that were subsequently needed. The picture that emerges from those employees of the civilian contractor is as follows. The migration from the ITS1 server to the new server was something that had been planned for many months. In May 2016, the IT engineers who were responsible for the migration were advised on the use of S-delete. The decision to deploy that on the server would, according to the civilian contractors, have been taken by UKSF, and they would have been advised about its effect. And finally, running S-delete would result in the permanent deletion of any data that had already been deleted from ITS1. Whilst this migration was being planned and its potential impact upon the secret IT system used by SF was being considered, the RMP were, as you now know, attempting to negotiate the recovery of the relevant UKSF data. It will be apparent from the short summary that I have just provided that it is possible to establish a chronology of what happened, and in some cases, why certain decisions might have been taken. But there are a number of important matters that cannot as yet be answered. Indeed, questions will need to be asked of both UKSF and the RMP about what was agreed and by whom, about why data was deleted, about what that data was, and about who agreed to its deletion, and lastly, why the difficulties in obtaining the necessary data still remain unclear almost 8 years later. So that deals with what I had wanted to say in way of opening and identifying the scope, the evidence and the relevant issues to you and to everybody else. We're turning to deal with the first of the witnesses, N5859, who is going to be called by Mr. Polnay. And before embarking on that, sir, we'd need to invite you to rise so that we can negotiate the necessary movement of individuals and to ensure that everything is in place so that the anonymity order is preserved.
Thank you, Mr. Glasgow. I'll rise till you call me back. Mr. Polney, just to be clear, that the restriction order that I made prohibiting the use of mobile phones in court is subject to a dispensation for the state core participant representatives for the purposes of taking instructions. All right? Mr. Polney.
The next witness is to be N5859. Could I ask that the witness is sworn, please?
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I think it's right for the purposes of this hearing and these hearings, you're going to be known as N5859. Do you understand? Now, in front of you, I think you've got a red folder. You got that? And that folder contains a list of various names and places and items that we're going to refer to by a gist or by another way. And would you turn please to tab 1 of that document? And if you wouldn't mind going down, that should have a list of N numbers on the left-hand side. Have you got that? And do we see there, there's a number there. If you go down, it's in numerical order N5859. And do we see in red some text next to it?
Yes.
And is that your true name?
It is, yeah.
Thank you very much. You should also have a black bundle, a large black bundle, which is the evidence bundle. And if you look at tab 1 in that bundle, please, it should be headed Witness Statement with N5859, dated the 25th of August 2023.
It is.
And is that your witness statement?
It is.
Sir, could I ask, as with other witnesses, that that witness statement is entered into the record?
Indeed, thank you.
So I'm going to ask you about 5 topics, just so you understand where I'm going to go with this. The first is some detail about you and your experience. The second is about ITS1. The third will be RFQ 28, or the Shuffle programme. The fourth is about your knowledge and interaction with the Royal Military Police. And the fifth is about the use of Estelite. All right? So we're going to go through those in order. I'm going to start, please, with your help so that the inquiry can understand something about you. And if it helps, I'm going to be referring for this part to your witness statement, starting at paragraph 3. So feel free to have that if that helps, and have a look at it, not if not. I think it's right, and you set this out at paragraph 3. You joined the British Army in 1986, is that right?
That's correct, yes.
So, some time ago now. You joined the Royal Corps of Signal, and you undertook a number of roles in the regular army, is that right?
That's correct, yes.
And your deployments included in Afghanistan, is that right?
Yes.
I think you say it was in late 1999 you diverted into what was then a new trade, is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
And that trade is information systems. Is that right?
Information systems operator, but yes.
Thank you. And I think as you set out, your first role was a database administrator, is that right?
Yes.
And then you were an information systems engineer, and that was across various posts, is that right?
That's correct, yes.
And as you set out, a key part of all of your roles at this time was the development of plans to maintain current systems, establish new systems, and migrate data from systems approaching obsolescence to their replacements. Is that right?
That's right, yeah.
Now, just if we're creating a timeline of what you've done, 1986 you joined the Army, 1999 you move into information systems, and I think it's right, it was around 2007 maybe 2008, when you first undertook a role in UK Special Forces within UK SF4. Is that right?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
And again, we'll just do this for the first time. We may not need to do it every time, and I'm sure we won't, but just to make sure we're all using the same term. If you turn, please, to tab 4 in the red bundle, which is just next to you on your right-hand side, sir. Again, just to make sure that we are all precisely understanding the same terms. Have you got tab 4?
Blank page.
A document behind tab 4?
There's no document there.
Thank you. But it's a good job we check now rather than later. I'll try that again. If you look behind tab 4, do you have a document there?
I do.
Good. And if you look down, I think you agreed you joined UKSF4. You see UKSF4 in black. Keep going down, it should be in alphabetical order.
Yes, I do, yeah.
And then if you go off to the bit in red, which is not to be said as it's covered by a restriction order, it's got the real correct name for what that is. And is that right? Is that the particular part of UKSF that you were posted into?
Yes, it was.
Right. And I think your role at the time was, and it's written in your statement, you'll excuse me, I hope, for the first time, W01. Does that stand for Warrant Officer First Class?
It does.
And that's pretty much the most senior non-commissioned officer rank, is that right?
It is.
Thank you. And you are the Warrant Officer First Class Operations Information Systems, is that right?
Yeah.
And that meant, I think as you set out, you were responsible for the communication information systems support for ITS1. Is that right?
Yes, I was.
Thank you. And we're going to come on to what ITS1 was in a short time. But could that fairly be described as the primary UKSF information system?
It was their primary system.
Thank you.
At its classification were others.
Thank you. Now, I think you go on to say how there came a time you were deployed to Afghanistan in 2011. Is that right?
Yes.
And you were at the Special Forces headquarters in Afghanistan, SFHQA. Is that right?
That's correct, yeah.
Now, you set out, and again, just so you can see where I'm asking questions about in paragraph 5, some technical detail about what you did in Afghanistan, and I'm going to return to that in a minute. But as we can see, your deployment was with UKSF, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
And whilst you were there, did you, in terms of what you were doing, socialise and spend the time when you weren't actually doing your job with UKSF1? And if you wouldn't mind just turning, if you go back again to tab 4, you can see, if you go down the left-hand side, you can see what UKSF1 is, just so we can be sure you're understanding the question.
Yes.
Thank you. And would you spend a lot of time socialising with UKSF1, or not so much?
Some of the members that were in the headquarters were from UKSF1, and there was a specific task force that was aligned under the command of that headquarters. My routine engagement was with members that were attached to the headquarters rather than the task force conducting operations.
Thank you. So you would socialise with members of UKSF1 that were attached to the headquarters that you were working at. Thank you very much. You'll be aware, sir, that this inquiry in its broadest sense is into allegations of serious misconduct by members of UK Special Forces in Afghanistan, and those allegations including extrajudicial killings. Whilst you were deployed to Afghanistan, did you hear anything, or did you become aware of any such allegations?
No.
Thank you. I think, turning back to your witness statement, please, and at paragraph 6, we will come back to some of the specifics that you set out at paragraph 5 in a minute. You returned from Afghanistan in around April or May 2012, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
And I think then your postings took you outside the UK Special Forces Group for 3 years or so, is that right?
Yes.
And during that time, you had other roles, is that right?
Yes, that's correct. I had two previous roles, two prior roles before I returned back to UKSF1.
Thank you. And your roles, we can see, if I may say, as your experience was growing from when you were first posted into the trade. You were responsible for, I think, planning of deployments of new CIS, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
And would you mind keeping your voice up a bit? I know it's a big, it's a big room. It's just important. Obviously, everybody can hear, and the transcribers as well, who are transcribing remotely. So I think you were responsible for the planning of the deployments of new CIS. That's Communication Information Systems. Yes.
Yes.
Recovery and removal of legacy CIS. Yes. Upgrades to CIS. Is that right?
Yes.
Thank you. And so come the period we're looking at, 2015, 2016, is it fair to say you're now pretty experienced in that sort of role?
I had a lot of experience across multiple legacy CIS systems that are in service at the time.
You've been doing it for a while, and you've been using the kit for a while.
Yeah.
Thank you. Now, you returned to UKSF4, I think, in April or May 2015. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
And your job title, we can see, is the SO3 J7 Capability brackets IS. I'm going to need your help with translating that, please. SO3?
Rank of captain, so staff officer grade 3.
Staff officer grade 3. J7?
I can't remember.
Right, no problem. We can come back to that later.
So the capability development branch.
And capability is, as you said, capability and brackets IS?
Information systems.
Thank you.
So future capability development for information systems.
Thank you. And I think you held an additional title as well, or additional role, as the UKSF4 Technical Officer Telecommunications, open bracket, Information Systems, close brackets. Yes?
Yes.
And in a way, as we're learning the military like to do, that's abbreviated, isn't it?
It is to TOTIS.
TOTIS. And I think when we look at some emails later, we may see that abbreviation used in various emails. And I think it's right, just for completeness, then you left that role in April 2018 and you retired and left the army. Is that right?
Mr. Poulnay.
Thank you very much for the time, which has been very useful, as we've been able to clarify what J7 stands for, which I'll deal with in open, if I may, in the witness. Just before I think we start at 11:25, might I ask the witness through you, again, said appreciating how difficult it can be, that in particular when dealing with N2311, not to refer to N2311's gender, please. Appreciate it, that's sometimes easier said than done when you're talking about an interaction with someone, but if I could ask the witness to have that, please, in mind.
So use they, then, them, or some other method. All right? Thank you.
Yeah. Or say N2311, as you see fit. Thank you very much. So I think it's now 11:25, which means we're ready to proceed once the representatives of the Afghan family...
Can we have the Afghan family representatives back, please? Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Poulnay.
Thank you. N5859, just turning back before we move on to one of the things you said. I think you said you were the SO3 J7 capability IS. I think you didn't have what J7 was at the forefront of your mind. Is J7 force development and training?
Yes.
So does that, that relates to, does it including things, the development of, the use of what you've got and how to make it better? So that would include IT development.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I think, as I said, moving on now, please, to the second topic I have for you, which is ITS1. And I think you said before that ITS1 was the primary UKSF information system that operated at secret level. Is that right?
That's correct, yes.
Thank you. Now, want to ask, please, from you a bit more detail about that, please. So, was ITS1 effectively a complete closed network?
It was an enclave, but there were external connections to other systems at that classification. So there was messaging gateways for emails.
So let's just pause there. So it's got facility to do emails, is that right?
Yes.
Did it have something which I'm sure everyone who's worked at an office will know about, SharePoint, or a version of SharePoint?
It didn't initially, but part of the role that I had during my first tour was to implement that on the deployed systems. It had already been brought into service.
And I think later we'll have a look at some of the documentation which lists every single one, or at least a number of them. Did it also have the facility to store data, for example, to save a Word document?
Yes.
Thank you. I was going to ask you about some of the terms you use at paragraph 5 of your witness statement, so you may want to turn it up now, because I think as you set out at paragraph 5, ITS1 was available to be used by UKSF in Afghanistan, is that right?
Yes.
And one of the reasons you were there was to facilitate and enable and maintain that, is that right?
Yes.
Thank you. Now, want to ask you, please, about one of the particular sentences, and if you could perhaps translate it for us. If you look at paragraph paragraph 5, do you see it says, this included the rollout of an operating system upgrade onto the deployed ITS1 nodes?
Yep.
Now, putting aside the fact this is relating to ITS1, this is really just a general question. What is a deployed node?
In that term, we refer to the nodes as a deployable data center, if you like.
A deployable data center.
Yeah, so a containerized deployable data center.
Now, so we've got a data center. In these terms, is that a physical piece of kit?
It's a physical piece of equipment. It was designed to work autonomously, so without a network connection, and provide all of the applications and services that are headquarters do its role until such time as communications.
Thank you. So just pausing there, which we're going to need to go over that in just a bit of detail, and I think it might be due to relate to the next sentence there. So it's deployed. So it's meant to work by itself. Is that right?
Can we just pause a moment? Is there a problem with the door?
Just one won't shut, so it's locked from the outside, but just one second.
Okay. Can everybody hear at the back? Good.
Is that okay?
Okay. Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Bonney.
So it's a bit of kit that means that people working in the headquarters can do things on ITS1. Is that right? And to work autonomously, that means literally by itself. Is that right?
Without a rear link communications.
And when you say a link, is that linked back to, I'll call it the main ITS1?
Yes.
Right. And it just goes on from this sentence where you talk about you did the rollout of an operating system onto the deployed ITS1 node. So that's effectively the latest bit of operating system kit. Is that right? Not kit, sorry, software. And then you said the deployment and rollout of SharePoint onto the deployed ITS1 node. Yes? So effectively you're installing SharePoint on it. And then the next bit, we've got there, and in-theatre meshing. Could you explain, please, what is in-theatre meshing?
Can I go back to the other points? Well, it was an entire upgrade of the nodes, not just an operating system, so replacement of all the hardware and the operating systems on them. So a technical refresh, if you like.
Okay.
And then the addition of SharePoint services that we're now going from more and more boxes to grow this data center.
Could you keep your voice up, please?
Yes, sorry.
Thank you.
So the addition of SharePoint servers and on there, as well as what we were looking to do was there were a number of points of presence across the Afghanistan theatre, and we were, rather than communicating back over the satellite there to a hub in the UK, we were looking to enable direct network links between those points of presence within theatre.
Fine. So within theatre, it means all the bits where you've got bits of, where you have a node, they can speak to each other. Is that right?
Yes, so there was a node in several points of presence. We were looking to mesh those and provide a communications path.
Thank you. So I think as you set out before the in-theatre meshing, the deployed node, so that's all the various places, would speak to each other via satellite link and the hub in UKSF4. Is that right?
Yeah.
And tell me if I've got this right, but once you've put in the meshing, they can speak directly to each other. Is that right? So
That's correct. So the main purpose of that is as we added SharePoint, we're experiencing a lot of latency over satellite.
and you're going to have to, it's a word you may be familiar with, latency. Does that mean effectively it takes a while, it's slow?
The time delay, so it's like 2 milliseconds to the satellite, back down at the ground, back up to the satellite, back down to the ground station. That was happening.
And it just takes a while, doesn't it? That's what it means
Yeah.
because of that. So by having them speak directly to each other, you can work more quickly and more efficiently.
Initially it was unworkable, it just wouldn't work over the speed and time delays involved.
Thank you.
The meshing provided a direct link to enable that.
Now, one thing I just want to ask you about is in relation to data. Now, you've explained that the node was there to operate autonomously. Is that right? So if there was no external link, you could still, for example, save a file or something like that.
The users in a single headquarters on our node could continue to do their work, but they wouldn't be able to communicate out of that site.
Until the link
Until the link
was back up. So let's say when we've got a situation where the link is backup, so it's possible to communicate with UK SF4. What would happen with data that was, for example, stored or saved? Say a person saved a Word file. Would that in SFHQA, so someone there saves a Word file on your deployed node. Does that get backed up to UK SF4, or did it on that old system?
No, it stays local on the deployed node unless it was sent via email or shared via SharePoint.
So they are, whilst they're all, as it were, linked together, is it in effect a separate system? Or part of it?
It's all part of the same system, but it's a component that can operate on its own. It's not dependent on the rear link for communications.
And would the, because I think you give a bit more detail about it later that you were specifically involved in, would the data that was on a deployed node be automatically backed up ever to UK SF4 at headquarters or not?
Remind us of what UKSF is for.
Well, I don't think there's a specific part that you deal with. If it's something you don't remember, please don't guess.
No, it wouldn't be. It would remain on the node.
Right. So, is it fair, in summary, to put it this: data created in Afghanistan at SFHQA would stay there unless it was specifically
sent.
Unless it was specifically sent.
Unless it was specifically saved or sent by email.
It could be sent back via email, or as we were moving on to deploying SharePoint, then it became possible for users in the big space to browse in and view documents there. Likewise, to publish from a node in theatre back to a site in UKSF4 or the headquarters.
Just give me one moment. There's one matter I want to just check. Just one last bit, just to finish on at least this part of this topic. If you go, please, to it's just at paragraph 26 of your witness statement. And it's, do you see right at the bottom, 3 lines. So right at the very last line of paragraph 26 on the bottom of page 10 of your witness statement. I think, were you aware that there were efforts by the RMP to recover material from SFHQA, effectively deployed node in Afghanistan, is that right?
Yes.
And in that way, were they, and I think you say, provided with the entirety of the hardware components and hard disk drives from the SFHQA node?
I believe they were, yes.
Right. And again, so just so now we can understand with the benefit of your explanation, so that would have from that node that was recovered data created or saved in Afghanistan. Is that right?
Yep.
But it would not have, for example, would it, say, for example, emails between people at UK SFHQ in the UK, unless they happen to be sent to Afghanistan?
It depends. I mean, time is a factor in this, and I wouldn't expect they would have the entirety of the whole 10 years of all of those emails contained on that node. Given that we'd replaced some of the equipment partway through the operation as well.
Absolutely, I'm sorry, that's my fault for not putting it in the right way. When the node in Afghanistan was recovered by the RMP, it's not to say that would have everything over 10 years or whatever left on it. As you've said, there were a number of upgrades and various matters. That would have material that was still available that was created and saved in Afghanistan, is that right?
At the point the node was shut down to move back to the UK.
At the point the node was shut down.
I've contained everything.
So just to give a very trivial example, a person at the headquarters in Afghanistan wrote a document and saved it onto there, you would have that, is that right? If it was saved in the right place.
If it was saved and they hadn't done anything to it themselves before they'd left.
Let's take, for example, a person in headquarters in the UK, let's say at SFHQ, okay, not in Afghanistan. Two people in HQ sent an email to each other, okay? That email would not be, would it, if I've understood your evidence correctly, on the SFHQ-A node, would it? Because it would have no reason to pass through that.
So if it stayed in the node in SFHQ and hadn't gone out to theatre, then no, it would not have been on that node.
Thank you. However, just to take another example, let's say a person at SFHQ, UK, sent an email to headquarters in Afghanistan, say attaching a document or whatever, depending, of course, appreciating on a number of matters, that might still be on the HQA node that was seized by the RMP as it went out to Afghanistan. Is that fair?
I think it's fair to say that, but also it would be on the sending and receiving station.
Would be on the sending and receiving station. That's understood, so you could recover that from either. So, whilst we're dealing with specific matters, I think at paragraph 29, you mentioned one particular issue that there was with ITS1. That ITS1, as you've said, was accredited to hold UK secret data, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
However, I think on a number of occasions, it became contaminated with above secret data, is that right?
Yes.
And that had to be reported, is that right?
Yeah.
And what would happen is then action would have to be taken to purge, to delete the above secret data from ITS1, is that right?
Yeah.
And that was obviously done because it wasn't allowed to hold above secret data, is that right?
That's correct, yeah.
Thank you. And that's an example, I think, as you set out, where there was a very deliberate action to delete data, is that right?
Yes.
For the reason that you've set out, it was not permitted to hold that. Good. So in terms of ITS1, please, and in terms of day-to-day work, who were you, the ITS1 system manager?
No, I wasn't. No.
So could you have a look, please, at the red table? And if you wouldn't mind turning, please, I think you'll probably be, well, there's a number of ways we can do it. If you turn to tab 2, it's got a lot of names in alphabetical order by surname. It goes on to, it's actually on 3 pages. And could you let me know, first of all, if you see that name of the person who was the ITS1 system manager?
Well, I think it's not any one individual, it's a team of individuals that are responsible for managing ITS1 at UKSF4.
At UKSF4.
And based in the...
Is that the UKSF4 DC, the data
Yes.
centre? All right. So could you, and it's obviously the names in black we're after, not the names in red, Could you tell me, please, the N numbers or the IIA numbers or S numbers for those people who you'd say who could be described as the ITS1 system manager?
So the only person that really calls out having administrative rights, but not the system manager as a role, would have been
I'm just remembering to remind you, please use either the
November 5857.
N5857.
He was a level 4 support engineer.
Okay, and let me just make sure I've got the. Thank you. I'm going to ask you about N5857 later. I think they were a civilian contractor. Is that right?
That's correct, yes.
So, who would you say, and if you don't know, would be their sort of the next person up, or that they would report to, but someone who actually was a member of, not a civilian contractor? Would that be effectively you, or might that be somebody
No,
else?
it wouldn't be directly to me. There was another individual there as IA29, who was a network engineer, I believe.
IA29. Right. Just trying to find. Thank you very much. Right. Now, there's a system that's been mentioned, I think, in fairness, not by you in your witness statement, called the CA Unicenter Help Desk.
Yes.
Is that something that you heard of?
Yeah, so that's a service desk tool. So when a user or a site or a deployed node had issues, they could either phone in or use the deployed part of that software to report their incidents. That would get raised up to level 3 and level 4, at which point the engineers with the deep technical knowledge of the specific subject would drill into it and try and resolve the problems and issues.
Just to break that down, if I may, first of all, that piece of software which you've explained, is that something that you would have access to if you needed to during your
No, I
day-to-day?
had an account on it.
You didn't have an account?
No, it wasn't part of the role that was for.
Okay. And you mentioned level 3 and level 4. I think other witnesses may be able to help in more detail. But let's say, for example, a user rang up saying, I've forgotten my password, I need a new password, something that's pretty basic. Would that be dealt with by effectively a level 1?
So if it were on a deployed node, it would be the military engineer that was administrating that piece of equipment. He could service and support his local users. If it was in a fixed space, it was a role of level 3 and level 2 within the DC.
That's the UKSF data centre.
Yeah.
And then finally, level 4.
And level 4 was the highly specialised, skilled subject matter experts in individual technologies, such as messaging, such as networking, databases.
Whatever the specific issue might be. That's the, if you like, the highest level, the most specialised. Is that right? So let's say there was something that needed approval or sign off on a ticket. Who would do that? And again, if you need to refer to names or positions, please use the gist sheet in front of you.
It depends on the scenarios involved.
We'll come back to a specific scenario
So
later.
I suppose that if it hit the level 4 or level 3 engineers,
Yep.
they were empowered to carry out activities within their skill sets.
Okay.
It was managed through the DC and military operations team that part of that sub-unit that managed that.
The military operations team. Well, I think what we'll do, if you don't mind, I'm going to move on a bit and we'll come back to it in a specific context, and that might be a bit more helpful rather than generalities. One last thing, in terms of ITS1, I'm talking about the physical bit, do you know where that is now? No idea.
Last I'd heard before.
Not asking you to mention locations if you're going to go there. That's why I put it in that way.
I left in
Do you know where?
2008. I left in 2018. It was still running in the back of the data centre
At UKSF.
UKSF.
So as of 2018, it was still running in the background there. So that means obviously not plugged in with people using it because it had been replaced.
It wasn't available to use, but it was still being powered on.
Powered on there. Thank you. So the next thing I'm going to ask you about, the third topic, is I'm going to call it RFQ 28, though it's a broad matter. So as you've explained, one of the things that in the end took up a lot of your time was the replacement of ITS1 with ITS8, is that right?
Yes.
And part of that involved the transfer of data from ITS1 to ITS8. That's right, isn't it?
Yes.
And obviously the idea would be that it's to be as seamless as possible. That's your aim.
Yep.
And can you, I'm fairly confident that we'll all agree that this sort of ended up taking place around 2016, that sort of time period.
I think it was around about mid-2016.
Yeah. And as far as you're concerned, do you remember where planning started?
I think it had started before I arrived in the unit back in May 2015. So the RFQ itself, I think, had probably been running through commercial and through planning at, Project Team 1.
Project Team 1.
And the UKSF headquarters.
Thank you. Now, was there, as far as you were concerned, any particular urgency to this project?
I think there was a couple of parts to it. It was an enabling activity, the migration to the new IS system.
An enabling activity?
Yeah.
Yep, go on.
But also it was addressing obsolete hardware, and we collectively were struggling to keep ITS1 going at the time. And this provided a midlife enhancement to get it over the edge to a point where we were ready to migrate it.
Right. So it wasn't leisurely, but neither was it critical, as in this needs to be done tomorrow, but you couldn't let it run on. Is that fair or not?
We couldn't have done the migration to ITS8 without having done this first, but equally we wouldn't have got to the migration of ITS8 if we hadn't have done RFQ 28.
Thank you. Now, in terms of the migration, is it right that was to be done by a civilian contractor?
Yes.
And was this the same civilian contractor that already administered ITS1, or a different one, so far as you're concerned?
So I'm going to have to refer to
No, that's absolutely fine. That's why I've got that. And there's also a pad there, so if there's something you see that you'd rather write down rather than use that, then we can do that as a way.
So Civilian Contractor 1 was the organisation that they were the design authority and the delivery design authority for ITS1.
Right.
And as part of the contracted support and the ongoing engagement that we had with that organisation for the life of ITS1, they provided some of the contractors at level 4. And when the level 4 engineers weren't able to resolve an issue, they could reach back into CC1 for further support from the actual engineers that designed and built the system.
So we've got CC1 who are responsible for the maintaining that. Sorry to ask it again, but were they also responsible for the new one?
No, they weren't.
That was someone different. Okay. Now, can we look at your role, please, in particular? You've helpfully set out some of this at your witness statement at paragraph 12. If you don't mind, I'll go through that with you now. So, I think you set out, do you have paragraph 13 of your witness statement there?
I do.
You were responsible for the management of a team of 9 contractors that conducted the planning and the coordination of the ITS8 delivery. Is that right?
Yes.
Right. Now, in terms of those people, again, do you want to just have a look at the GIST list again? Did that include N5858 within the team of people?
No.
N5857?
No.
Do you see, could you let me know if there's any of the people on there who were in your team, please? That you were leading?
No, there isn't.
None of them?
None of them.
Okay. So, you set out the responsibilities there, and I think at A, one is moving the ITS8 node from where it was developed to UKSF4. Is that right?
Yes.
So that's a physical move and literally plugging it in, getting it set up. Yep. And B, planning the deployment of other ITS8 hub nodes. Is that right?
Yes.
I think you've explained about nodes before. And then C, which we'll come back to, preparing the ITS1 for data migration. Is that right?
Yes.
And D, migrating the data from ITS1 onto ITS8, ensuring information coherence between the central node and the hub nodes, and ensuring they've all, ensuring they've all got the same consistent information. So could you explain, please, what do you mean by preparing ITS1 for data migration? What does that mean?
I suppose there were a number of activities, of which RFQ 28 was one. So costed and funded planned activities to get ITS1 into a condition where it was compatible with the new technologies that we were migrating into. And the role and function of that 9-man team was to manage those projects and programs through. When it says preparing for data migration, it wasn't physical hands-on keyboards, it was a lot of project manager teams managing the sort of oversight and running and execution of those separate work packages through Project Team 1.
Right. So there's obviously a lot of data on ITS1.
Yeah.
And put bluntly, did various processes need to be devised to get that data in a state where it could then be transferred efficiently and conveniently to ITS8? Is that right?
Yes.
Is that one of the things that's meant by preparing for data migration?
I think it was sort of coming out with a data migration plan, of which one of the project team was the data migration project manager, I believe.
And who was the, and again, if you could have a look if they're on the sheet, who was the data migration project manager?
It's not on this list.
Not on there.
No.
Would you be able to write down their name on a piece of paper, which I think we should have there, if you, or do you remember it? If not, I'm not going to ask for a piece of paper to come for you.
I can remember a face, I can't remember the name.
All right. If the name does occur to you later, would you mind just letting us know, please? Thank you.
So that team of project managers was contracted under Project Team 1, specifically as part of the ITS8 programme.
And was that project team, did they come from CC1, Civilian Contractor 1?
No, they're independent
Again, don't want to
individuals.
just mention, just be careful you don't mention their name or
No.
independent individual.
Independent individuals as contractors through an IT contracting agency, specifically around their project management skills.
Okay. So, just want to have a look at a couple of documents with your help, please. First of all, you're going to need the big file. First of all, if you go to, please, tab 3, page 1515. This is in the blue folder. Sorry, the black folder. Have you got a document there which heads decommissioning, disposal of current assets?
Yes.
And I'll ask in a moment, we should be able to have that put up on the screen. It should be started paragraph 7, 7.1.1, just to make sure we're all dealing with the same document. Is this a document that you were working with at the time a fair bit?
It was, yeah.
And it's one of the, if you like, commercial framework documents, for want of a better word, that set out what was going to happen. Is that right?
I think this was the high-level design of those activities.
And do we see it 7.1.1, and as you quite rightly say, this is at a high level. The current storage system contains classified information. CC1 are only responsible for the migration of valid defined data from the existing storage to the new 3-PAR storage arrays.
Yes.
Got that? So does that mean it's just dealing with, there's two parts of it, it's CC1 that are responsible for this, is that right?
Yes.
That's the contractual agreement, it's CC1 who should be doing it, and their employees, is that right? Or people as freelancers, whoever they get in.
CC1 is a commercial organisation, yes.
And valid defined data, what does that mean to you, or what did you understand that to mean?
So it's the data set that was on ITS1 and what was flagged to be migrated.
Thank you. And if I could ask you to turn, please, now to tab 4, please, page 4. You might need to look at page 3 as well, just before the bottom, which gives the paragraph 3.3.6. I'll read this in. This is the data storage transition strategy. And at 3.3.6 it says, table 1 below gives a list of the services to be migrated, along with the associated data volumes. That's just at the bottom of there, 3.3.6. Have you got that?
Yes.
And then if we go over the page, we've got a table at the top. Is that then setting out effectively the data that does need to be transferred?
They're the data sets that would need to be transferred.
The data sets, and that's the, we can see all sorts of things, some which will be familiar. For example, SharePoint.
Yep.
Is that right? Which we've heard about. Exchange. Again, I appreciate it's more sophisticated. It's that email.
It's the email system.
Email system. So we've got there, amongst other more specialist applications, imagery analysis and that sort of stuff. It sets out there one of the things that you ought to transfer is Exchange and SharePoint. Is that right? And am I right looking at these documents, it's CC1 that's due to do it, is that right?
Yes.
And they're reporting into you, is that right?
No, they report into Project Team 1.
So they're reporting into
Project Team 1 contracts CC1 to conduct work on UKSF4's behalf.
Understood. So that's the people who the contract's with. So they've got people, and again, please forgive me if I've got the wrong end of the stick. One of the things I think you set out at paragraph 13 of your witness statement is one of your jobs is, in fact, migrating the data from ITS1 to ITS8.
Yeah.
So would that be done by employees of CC1?
Yes.
Against that agreement?
Yeah.
Understood. So it's probably my fault for not being clear about it.
Yeah, there was no civil servants or military individuals involved in that as part of the Project Team 1 paid for RFQ 28 to be done, and as part of the assurances it was done by CC1 individuals.
That's it. Thank you. So we've got Project Team 1 there. They hold the purse strings. They're in overall command. They're the contractor. They're the party to the contract, not you.
Yeah.
They've got individuals who are going to actually do that. Is that right?
No, they've contracted. Sorry, what we've had. So, Project Team 1 contract, CC1. Understood. CC1 have got full-time employees.
Yep.
And those full-time employees are involved in the design and the production of ITS1, and therefore with the subject matter experts on it. And therefore the RFQ was to pay for them to plan and implement that migration.
So you've got Project Team 1, if you like, right at the top, and they've got CC1, which is the organisation. Then you've got the actual individuals, if you like, who are the subject matter experts who are being paid for to do it. And what I'm trying to understand is where you fit into that, because you say you're responsible, or one of your responsibilities was migrating the data. Can you explain how it is, where do you feed into that, and at what level?
In terms of no real direct movement of data, I didn't have a systems administrator account client and wasn't able to physically move anything around.
Absolutely. You're not there literally copying stuff from one to another, are you?
So it's the overall management and coordination of these activities in line for preparation movement from the legacy system onto the new system.
So where here we've got CC1, they've got their subject matter experts, and were they based, I think you said, in the UK SF for DC, the data centre? Some of them.
Again, part of the contract with CC1 was to provide level 4 engineers, but CC1 as a commercial organisation have their own headquarters.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm just talking about the part of this particular contract. So we've got the individuals from CC1, and is it individuals working from them that's literally doing the copying, the moving across?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying they would report to you. Obviously, they report to CC1, but you're coordinating their activities. Is that what you're saying?
Coordinating the timings when it was going to be done, making sure that both sides of the migration were ready, so that anything that was needed to be done for ITS8 and coordinate with the team that were delivering that, and just generally managing the plan to execute this work instruction.
Okay. So just so we're clear, and it's not a criticism of you, when it says in your witness statement, it says preparing for data migration, would it be a better way of saying you were making sure CC1, all their employees, had properly prepared for data migration?
To prepare for that.
And you would coordinate it.
Yeah.
And again, without stating the obvious, you would do that, no doubt, by speaking to the relevant individuals. Is that right?
Speaking to the individuals, various meetings and planning activities, and a number of project meetings and routine updates that we were involved in as part of this continual threat of the migration to ITS8.
No doubt, from varying degrees of formality to sort of project board type things to going over and speaking to them.
Limited working groups and...
How's it going? Thank you. And again, sorry to go back to it. Some of the individuals, the SMEs who are doing the actual preparation for migration and the transfer, would they be physically situated, or at least some of the time, in UK SF4 DC?
Yeah, one was a full-time worker in that environment.
Thank you.
So, N5857 was a full-time worker on site within the DC.
So when we look at N5857, they're full-time in UK SF4 DC.
Yes.
And they were involved in this project, is that right?
I think part of CC1's planning was that we've got people in there that are intimate to the system at the right level with administrative privileges. We'll use those individuals.
Give me a comment. It makes sense, doesn't it? You've got the people who are already experts on it. They're the best people to prepare it. Thank you. Now, as you understand, we can. I think it's still on the screen. We can see the items that are there to be transferred over. That it's in the plan to transfer over, including we can see Exchange and SharePoint and user profiles. Would deleted data fall within any of these or not?
No.
So, as you understand it, when moving over from ITS1 to ITS8, the plan did not involve copying over deleted data.
No.
Thank you. I just want to turn just back to some of the documents, really, just to finish this topic. If you wouldn't mind going, please, just to tab 3, page 24, which sets out some of the transition plan. Have you got that? And it's item 15 on there.
Sorry, which page is it?
It's page 24, please. It's also on the. If you've got that screen in front of you, you might be able to go straight to it. This is a list of risks. But do you see the box on the right-hand side, mitigating actions? And if you see that, it's the second paragraph up from the bottom where it says furthermore. Do you see that?
Yes.
The proposed transition strategy is based on a non-destructive approach to migration.
Yep.
So just pausing there. What is a non-destructive approach to migration? What does that mean?
Any activities during that data migration would retain the integrity of the user's files and information.
Thank you. And the next sentence, it says, this means that during outages, the service under transition can be restored quickly if needed by the authority. Is that right?
Yes.
Thank you. And one last from this document, please. If we're still in tab 3, could you go to page 3 of this document, please? Have you got that there? And it's 2.1.3. You got that?
Yep.
So during transition, and that's really, isn't it, moving data from ITS1 to ITS8, there shall be two persons who coordinate the execution of transition. They are the CC1 transition manager and the MOD transition manager. The CC1 project manager or their representative shall attend to ensure that project level issues are resolved as quickly as possible. So, first of all, again, looking at the gist sheet if you need to, who was, so far as you were concerned, the CC1 transition manager? So that's the civilian contractor.
N5861.
N5861. Thank you. And who was the MOD transition manager?
I haven't seen their name.
Is that a name that you remember?
Yes.
Would you be able to write it down on a piece of paper, please, for us?
There's a pad and paper there for you.
Do you want the organisation or just the name?
If you wouldn't mind writing down the organisation as well, that would be helpful. Thank you.
In clear or cipher?
You can write it in clear in that document. Thank you. That's all right. That's not a name we've got before. And so just, could we call that person IIA 100? Just so if we have to refer to them again or another witness does, we know we're all talking about the same person and we can apply that later if needs be.
Yes.
Thank you.
Can I see the paper, please?
Yes, of course. Yeah. And I think if it assists all of those who are following it with the gist sheets, the organisation is described as UKS4SU1. That's the name of the organisation that's gisted that person you say works for. Thank you. The next topic I'm going to come on to is please topic 4, which is the Royal Military Police. Doing your best, when is it that you became aware that the RMP were interested in ITS1? And just to be clear, I'm talking about at UKSF4, not the node that was recovered from UKSF HQ-A in Afghanistan. When did you first become aware RMP were interested in ITS1?
I think it was Q4 of 2015.
Q4
Yeah.
of 2015. And what did you understand that they wanted it for, or what their interest was?
At the time, we didn't know. All we were told was we were to provide them assistance and that they were looking to take the node from headquarters, the deployed headquarters, and we're looking for some evidence on it.
So just to be clear, so we're not talking at cross purposes, you just mentioned the deployed headquarters. Do you mean at UKSF4, you talk about
In Afghanistan.
in Afghanistan, right? So putting aside Afghanistan, it's not that part I'm interested in at the minute. I'm talking about UKSF4, if you like, in the data centre. The piece of kit that was eventually decommissioned. When did you become first aware that RMP were interested in that?
The latter part of 2016.
Latter part 2016. And in relation to that, did you understand why they were interested in it. Were you told that or not?
It was a continuation of the activities that they'd come to see us about a year beforehand.
So more of the same.
The first investigation wasn't successful, and they were looking elsewhere on ITS.
Thank you. And were you made aware what the investigation was about, even in broad terms?
At the time, no.
At the time. So I think
So, when we met with the RMPs on I think, 2 occasions early on, they wouldn't tell us or couldn't tell us what they were looking for. They were just looking for something on the system.
Thank you. Just so there's no doubt, I think you're now aware that at least one focus of the investigation was extrajudicial killings or allegations of extrajudicial killings. Was that something that you were aware of in 2016?
I think it was, no.
Thank you. Now, you said you became aware that the RMP were interested in ITS1, as it were, the main server. Are you able to remember how or from whom you were made aware of that?
I didn't quite get the question.
How did you become aware of that they were interested in ITS1, the RMP? Do you remember?
I think it would have been around about communications as we were going through the project to migrate to ITS8.
Yep.
There was a lot of backwards and forwards around maintaining the integrity of users' files, folders, information, and giving assurances that user data wouldn't be deleted or altered or changed in any way.
Right. Well, let's look at, there's some emails that have been recovered, and I know some of which you've looked at. Perhaps I could ask for your help with some of that. If you wouldn't mind turning, please, to tab 6, page 3. Have you got that?
Yep.
Now, as we're all aware, email chains, especially when they're printed off for court or really forever, you have to work backwards, don't you? You have to work from, generally speaking, the bottom up if you want to get it in time order. So if we have a look at this, we can see this email is from the Northmore Team Cyber Lead, Pridden, JR, Warrant Officer. Is that right? And if we then have a look at who it's addressed to, we can see it's to the UKSF4 Chief of Staff. Yeah, COS. And then, can we just have a look, the CC, UKSF4 J7 CAP IS multi-user.
Yep.
And am I right, that was an account that you were part of?
Yep.
So even though it doesn't actually have your name, well, it does actually, we'll come to that in a minute, in the heading, this is an email that was sent to you.
Yep.
Thank you. Or copy recipient. And if you wouldn't mind, please, just to look through some of the text so we can understand what you are likely to have known at the time. It's from Warrant Officer Jim Pridden, so he's in the Royal Military Police, to, if you like, your Chief of Staff, or Chief of Staff of UKSF4. Just a quick follow-up regarding our meeting yesterday, pausing there, that would appear to refer, wouldn't it, to a meeting between, present at least, was Warrant Officer Pridden and UKSF4 COS.
Yep.
Do you remember if you were present at this meeting, or can you not help with that now?
I think it might well have been at that meeting. I can't absolutely say it, but...
Understood. And it may be, there's some data later which suggests you may be right about that. If we just go to the third paragraph, which says, I've discussed the detail of the meeting with Captain Wright, Northmore Team 1 SIO, who agrees that working on your decommissioning date in September 2016, after you've transferred the data to your new system, is the best course of action. As long as you can confirm that no data will be deleted from the decommissioned system during that process.
Yep.
Yep. So I think this is what you were mentioning before,
Yep.
sort of data integrity.
Yep.
The RMP are making clear, aren't they? We've got it in here, that they want data integrity. Yes? And as someone who's familiar in CIS, no doubt you'd understand the importance of that for a police investigation.
Yes.
And if we just go down, it's between the hole punches. Can you see it then says, can I ask that OF3 N5859, and if we were to take that out, it's actually got your name there, or someone else, confirm the following points to Staff Sergeant Sivieri.
Yes.
So it appears that somehow Warrant Officer Pridden's got your name, or knows at least who you are, because they're asking politely via the Chief of Staff that you could do some work.
Yeah.
Right. So we can agree, can we, that as of the 29th of July 2016, maybe before,
Yeah,
who knows?
I'm happy with that, and I can't 100% say, but I do recall the discussions around that time. I haven't got my dates running.
No, I'm sure everyone will understand it's quite hard to pick out particular dates of meetings from a long time ago. That's why we've got the emails to try and help pin it down. You agree it rather appears this date and time, maybe before. You know, first of all, the RMP are interested in ITS1. Do you agree?
Yeah.
And second, perhaps unsurprisingly, they want it with data integrity so far as they're concerned. Thank you. And I'm not going to ask you, if you then go back over the next pages, there's then discussions about they've been trying to get hold of you, but you've been on leave. Okay, I only mention that for completeness. So would you mind now turning to tab 7, please, page 6, which is another string of emails, please. Okay. Have you got that there? So I'm just looking at the bottom part of this for the moment. And now we've moved on to the 27th of September 2016. Yeah? Have you got that?
Yes.
And we can see it's an email from UKSF4 to IC. It'll be obvious to everyone in the military, but to those who aren't, second in command, is that right? Or maybe even in charge.
Yeah.
So this is a fairly senior person.
Yes. And
if we look at the address list there, we can see it's to N2311. Do you see that?
Volney.
Thank you. N5859, just finishing asking you a few questions about the RMP, and I think you were saying that you thought the RMP's technical team knowledge of some of the concepts was relatively basic. Is that fair?
I think so. They kind of gave the impression, that they were looking for files, folders, bits of information, as if they were, I felt, trying to find something on somebody's laptop or a personal computer rather than a large data set that is spread across multiple sites and points of presence around the globe.
Thank you. And just for completeness, I think one of the examples you give, paragraph 27 of your witness statement, is that, for example, a RAID, which stands for Redundant Array of Independent Disks, is constantly managing and optimizing how and where data is stored and effectively moving it around and allocating the file segments, the actual specific part where it's stored, automatically to improve system performance. Is that right?
Yes.
And it's an automatic process. And is that RAID technology something that is often employed on servers?
It was at the time. I think it's sort of being phased out now with newer technology, but at the time that was what we had.
And I think, as you set out, that in your view, the RMP found that concept of how that sort of system might work difficult to understand.
They were looking for, where would we find a particular file from a given point in time. We had to explain that the way that data was broken up, spread across those disks, routinely moved around, overwritten, and optimized, allow them to go to the disk where the file was, where our file was written at the point it was created.
Thank you. One last question for you on ITS1, please, and the RMP. It's going back to something you said earlier, that when you left in 2018, ITS1 was still powered on. Do you know why it was still powered on, or was that not something within your knowledge?
I think it was a hangover from Northmore. I think Northmore was still running, and we'd been requested to leave it in a state post-migration that it was in.
Thank you. Thank you. The last topic I'm going to ask you about is S-delete. Now, I think it's right you now understand what S-delete is that right?
Yeah.
And I'm just going to, I'm afraid, jump around just a little bit in time, okay? And we'll draw it together with a timeline at the end. I just want to be clear that the dates of certain documents so that you're not being inadvertently misled. Would you mind turning, please, to tab 2? Page 1. And this is, I think, a document written by you, isn't it? We can see on page 2 your email signature.
Yeah. So again, as with November 2311, this was a list of questions. I copied and pasted them, appended my answers to those so that it read.
And again, just so we can be absolutely clear, and I don't want you to be misled on time in any way. If we look at the chain on the next page, the email you're responding to is dated the 11th of January 2017. You see it says, I need an answer N5859, please.
Yes.
Yep. So now we go back to page 1. We don't actually have at the top of this the specific, the actual email header, but we can see it must have been written, it would seem, sometime after the 11th of January. Okay?
Yep.
And again, just I want to orientate this in time for you, so again, you understand where this fits in. It appears, we'll come to this in a minute, it's well after S-delete has been run, okay? and it's well after, or not well after the migration from ITS1 to ITS8 is complete. Okay? And as I'm sure you'll remember, this has arisen, as you were told, because the RMP had some issues about what had happened. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Right. So you've been asked to find out the following. Who? And you say 2 CC1 engineers spoke to the SIB, and that's the RMP, isn't it? Their Special Investigation Branch. N5857. Just pausing there, that's someone you've spoken about already,
Yes.
who worked in the UK SFDC, SF4DC, for CC1, and was on the project, if you like, and someone you dealt with. And IIA11, N5857 explained that S-Delete was run on legacy storage before the migration took place. Yep?
Yes.
And then the next thing is what? S-Delete was used to aid the RFQ28 data migration. Okay?
Yes.
And then you've gone on to set out some technical detail. Yeah?
Yeah.
Now, just so we're clear, were you aware that S-Delete was used to aid the data migration when it happened?
I don't think I was, no.
You don't think you were?
No. I wasn't.
May I ask, looking back on it now, why not?
I can't think why. Specifically, don't think, and going back over my recollection, I don't think S-Delete was specifically called out or something. It didn't trigger my memory when I first asked about it.
Now, one of the jobs that you explained that you had was, again, and it's well understood, not doing it yourself, but making sure others are doing and doing properly, the preparation for data migration, and then the data migration. Now, based on what's said here, your words, S-Delete is part of that process, isn't it?
It was used in that process, yeah.
Yeah. So is it fair to say, if you weren't aware, it's something that you should have been aware of?
Yeah.
Because appreciate we know the lines of the way the contract go, but you're responsible for that team. Sorry, that's not the right way of putting it. You're responsible for the project, and this was part of the project.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, just looking at it, in fact, it appears it took some time to do the S-Delete zeroing of data. Do you agree?
I don't agree with the statement, the S-Delete zeroing of data. That wasn't the purpose of why it was used. That came out in it. It was used to prepare the files and folders for migration. It wasn't to zero anything.
So I quite understand that's your evidence. And my apology for, I didn't mean to premise the question in a way that was putting it in that way. I can probably do it better by directing you to part of the email which you put. And you put when. As you see there, it's just by mine. It's by the second hole punch. And you said it's likely the software, that's S-Delete, was installed before 2013, as it's already on a legacy file server, and during the recent data migration, the tool was run against all logical volumes, that's drive letters,
Yeah.
So C, D, E, F, G, whatever, going on to the X drive or whatever. And it says here, the tool was executed on a server/drive letter basis between 24th of June 2016 and the 23rd of August 2016. So from that information, the tool was being run over quite some period of time.
Yeah. Good.
And again, given it was run over such a period of time, are you able to assist with why, as you say is the case, you weren't aware that it was being run?
Well, I'd say I wasn't aware of the name of the tool as SDLE. I was aware a number of tools were being used to prepare those drives and volumes for data migration.
Okay. So let's just, if I can ask you a bit about that. So is it the case you were aware that a tool was being used to prepare the data?
I can't say for definite or not. I'm aware that those drives were being prepared for migration. I don't recall SDLE being specifically mentioned, but I'm aware that there was a number of tools that were already in the ITS1 system that was part of the plan to use as part of RFQ28.
Because I think, as you've said, you would go to the, I've forgotten the term, the shop floor, the UKSF4 data centre, and would it have been obvious that, forget the name of it, a tool was being run on the data?
In what way? It would have been obvious by visiting or?
Well, one of the things specifically I'd suggest they're dashboards there, and it would be visible on the dashboard because lots of data was being...
something displayed on those dashboards.
I'm sorry, would you
There
mind
would
saying...
have been something that was displayed on those dashboards. The dashboards were showing the state of the system, status of comms networks, and whether there were nodes online or not. So network status dashboards rather than monitoring directly the states of the servers and things in the back end.
All right. Is it your evidence you're aware that a tool or tools were being run?
I am, yeah. I can say that I'm aware that there was some recommended tools that were to be used to prepare the data for migration.
And would those tools not need your sign-off or at least approval or awareness of?
So now knowing that they were already on the system, that would have been prior to my arriving in post.
What about the use of the tools, though? Would that not need your approval or sign-off?
So the use of those tools was restricted to sort of level 4 type engineers.
But
it wouldn't have come to me directly to authorise the use of that tool.
But not, I thought you said, and please excuse me if I've misunderstood it though, as part of the data migration process, as you were responsible for that, that's something you ought to have been aware of.
I was aware of some tools, I don't recall S-delete as a term being directly used.
Because, again, as you set out, this is a UK secret system. It's an important system, I think, as has been explained for UKSF. And one of the things I think that the RMP were told that you can't have it because it's it's a critical system. It could cause, I think, damage to national security.
Yeah.
So, in those circumstances, wouldn't people need to get sign-off from someone within the Ministry of Defence before using a tool that could cause permanent changes to a server?
That tool, I believe, or that suite of tools was already on the system and used for a number of activities to support managing of the IT system.
So
it would have gone through some sort of design authority for inclusion. It would have been down to me to yay or nay whether it was already on the system rather than me giving authority for it to be brought onto the system.
That's absolutely understood that it was on the system beforehand. I'm asking you about the using it on the system as part of the data migration that you were in charge of.
I go back to RFQ28. RFQ28 was CC1's proposal of how they were going to conduct the activities. That document doesn't particularly or specifically call out S-delete or that suite of tools.
No, that's understood. But there's the CC1, and I'm sorry, I don't want to go over the same ground again. There's the actual contractors, they're CC1's people in the data centre. This is being done as part of the data migration process, and you're the SME for that. You're in charge of it. You're the project manager.
Yeah.
And I think, as you've accepted, it's something that you ought to have known about.
But when you put it like that, yes. However, there was a number of organisations in that train, including CC1 and the team that signed off on that contractually for its use.
But you were quite literally the man on the ground, weren't you?
So the last backstop to catch something like that.
All right. Now, if you look just below the second hole punch, you've got something said oversight. So it says the process was tracked and executed by CC1. Yeah? Have you got that paragraph?
Yep.
And monitored between the dates above.
Yep.
Who was responsible for the monitoring?
It would have been CC1, probably N5857 as the on-site engineer that was conducting the task.
Again, I appreciate later on it's not necessarily the most helpful to sort of go over lines for grammar. But if it said the process was tracked, executed and monitored by CC1, that would obviously mean it's CC1 doing all of that. Would you agree? However, it doesn't say that, does it? It says the process was tracked and executed by CC1 and monitored between the dates above. Might that mean that the monitoring was being done by someone other than the person who was tracking and executing it?
Yes.
And in terms of the person doing the monitoring, if it's not CC1, who would that be likely to be?
So I can't answer to that accurately, but I would like to say, I can't remember the name given on this.
The name given on that?
And the team within the data centre operations team and those running the day-to-day service operations of that system.
I'm sure you understand why I have to ask you directly. Might it have been you that was monitoring it as the project manager and this was part of the project?
No, it wouldn't have been.
Are you confident about that? So we know what rather appears, it's obviously a matter for the chair, that S-delete was run. There was then the data migration. And then we know certainly come January there was a problem. Okay? A serious problem. And it's now ended up back on your desk. How did you find out the information that you put into this email?
Part of it I didn't know. Part of it I've gone and got more information from N5857, the military operations staff within the DC environment and the sort of the wider team within ITS1 that was supporting.
And how did you feel when you found out the information that you put in this email?
Well, I think the way to put it is that, as far as I'm aware and as far as I'm concerned, no user files, no user data, no user emails, no files, folders, information was deleted. We did everything we could to take the hundreds of gigabytes of files and folders and make sure that every single one of those was representative afterwards. So I can't say, hand on heart, of any view that I believe anything was deleted during that process.
Yeah, that's understood. I'm sorry. Perhaps if I could put the question a different way. When you spoke to N5857 and all other colleagues and you found out that this delete utility was run, were you shocked?
So I'm disappointed to find out after the fact that we weren't fully aware of the details of what was.
Because I think, as you agree, the use of this tool is something that, if things were running as they ought to be, you absolutely ought to have been aware of. Yeah? And one of those reasons, and have you got a timeline document in front of you? I have a copy of it. This is it just sort of helps with some of the emails. Do you remember some of the ones that we looked at early? You're in light green. Do you see the entry? It's this entry here, N5859. Agreement has been reached. Can you see that there? It's just effectively a snip from part of document 6. Because there's the email that I think you agreed you were a party to, saying that agreement has been reached that the RMP will have unrestricted access to the powered down server, which contains all original data inclusive of deleted data. Yeah?
Yeah.
So, I know we're jumping back in the questions I was asking you earlier. We've got that evidence there. You're aware this is a thing they want. The RMP want the deleted data, and you're aware, I think, as you've fairly said, that forensic integrity or data integrity was important to the RMP. Yes? Yet, if we then have a look, during that time period, S-delete was actually still being run. Do you see?
Yes. Yeah. So I would have given that assurance, not knowing specifically what I knew later about what S-delete did.
Just wonder this, and no doubt this was one of many actions that was taking place at work. And is it, or might it be the case that in fact you just didn't put 2 and 2 together? Tools being run and the RMP's need for data integrity. Is that a possibility that the dots weren't joined?
It's fairly easy to say that RFQ28 and the Northmore investigation weren't at the top of the list of everything that I was dealing with at that time.
So, sorry to push you on it. Is that, on reflection, might that be a possibility? That, on one hand, the assurances are being given by N2311 that we've gone over, and the dots just hadn't been joined by you?
Possible.
So, thank you very much. Those are the questions.
Can I just ask one or two more? You are and were extremely experienced in this field, as you've explained to Council. Had you conducted or been in charge of or been involved in a transition of data of this sort before?
I had in my previous post.
You told us and told Council that you were aware that a suite of recommended tools were being used at the time to prepare for the transmission of data. Given your knowledge of the area, were you aware of the possibility that those tools might damage or change or alter the data? Indeed, That was, of course, part of their purpose in order to prepare for the transition.
So I think there's two parts of that. One, we were looking to maintain the integrity of the user's files, the databases, the images that were on the system. We weren't necessarily concerned with the ones and zeros and the sectors that they were written into on the It wasn't an exact mirror migration. We were concentrating on the weight of the information rather than the...
You refer to the ones and zeros, but as you've explained, when data is deleted from an ordinary file, it's simply removed from the index, but it's still potentially retrievable.
Yes.
So just explain what you were trying to say then.
The assurance we were given around if there was a deleted file on there, we were not looking to disrupt anything on the old system, rather focused on moving the files and information that was there onto the new system.
So again, just help us with what your attitude was in relation to the deleted but retrievable files in this process.
I think we knew Northmore was going on. We weren't looking to do anything to that, and actually the deleted files weren't of relevance to the collection of data for migration.
And you say you weren't...
So the whole reason for maintaining and running the legacy system on post the data migration was that that's the node, that's the hub in the state that it was when we migrated the data onto the new system.
When you say you weren't looking to do anything to those files, are you referring to the deleted and undeleted?
The undeleted, so that the data that was there, that was the focus to get all of the information onto the new system.
The undeleted, the non-deleted.
We weren't looking to migrate anything undeleted. It was invisible to us. It wasn't. There wasn't really a way, I think, that we could migrate deleted data onto a new system. We weren't looking to manage data that had been deleted by users.
Thank you. Anything further?
No, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for giving your evidence. You're free to go. Thank you. We'll rise now, please. Can we take a shorter lunch break? It's now 20 past. Can we resume, please, at 2:05? That'd be all right. Thank you very much indeed.